Just sedikit.
Yeah, but
sedikit.
it's good because I cannot speak. Do you speak Korean too?
No, I'm not from Korea originally.
You originally from Holland, yeah?
Yeah, from Holland, and actually my mother
Mm-hmm.
is from Indonesia originally, from Bandung.
Oh,
Really?
from Bandung. Can you speak Sundanese?
No,
No.
only mungkin. I think only mungkin. And,
Okay.
Yeah.
but my mother already lived in the Netherlands for maybe 40 years or 45 years.
So you've been occasionally go to Bandung? Then?
Yeah, I've been there many times. I have a lot of relatives, like uncles,
yeah,
and aunts and nephews. Yeah.
Do you remember which part of Bandung your relative live?
These days they are in many different places, but before there were some members in Artiningsih.
Okay.
Oh, Artiningsih.
Yeah, because me and Ati, we've been living in Bandung for several years because we
our undergraduate program is on
ITB in Bandung.
Bandung
ITB,
Institute
yeah.
Technology.
Yeah. So we know Bandung well too.
And before my grandmother and my grandfather, they lived near Jalan Sunda, near the Pasar Kosambi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe next year I go to Indonesia again. Really?
Hopefully you have some time to visit Semarang when you come to Bandung.
That would be great. Yeah. I also have one contact at UI in geography. Yeah. Mrs. Vidyavati. So usually I visit her. Yeah. And we have also done some things together on the tea farmers before. But yeah, it would be great to come to Semarang too. Yeah. And how many lectures do you have for this international series?
Only 3 of us. Yeah, me, Ati, and actually Landung. And we have also Mbak Intan Hapsari here. She helped us to arrange the talk. Not only,
but I mean, in the you have, this is a series, so you have multiple.
Yes.
Yeah, Mbak Intan not only organized this talk, but also all of the series, the international lecture series that we have in Undip at Undip in this year.
Yeah,
she's actually our student at our the PhD, the doctorate program.
Great.
Nice to see you, Prof. Edu.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Know you.
We still with the students.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Saya ada waktu.
But this is your lunch time actually, though.
Sorry?
This time is actually your lunch time.
Oh, I can have late lunch, no problem. Yeah. I just have lunch after the end of the lecture. No problem.
In which city you live in Holland?
Originally, I was raised in a very small town near Germany. It's called Doetinchem.
Doetinchem?
Yeah, not so far from Arnhem. It's very small.
Yeah.
And
I know Arnhem.
Oh, you know Arnhem?
Yeah, I've been living in Groningen for several years because my wife, she did her PhD at University of Groningen there.
Oh, great.
With Johan Walter. Do you know Johan Walter?
No, I don't know.
No. And when where did your PhD?
At Utrecht University.
Utrecht. Oh yeah.
There is a very big geography department there.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
And so I lived 10 years in Utrecht. And then after that 4 years in Thailand, and now 10 years in South Korea.
I only live in Groningen for 4 years. Actually, I did my PhD in France.
Oh.
Paris, but because my wife, she did her PhD in Groningen, and we brought our children to Groningen too. Then after some years in Paris, then I moved to Groningen, doing my PhD there. Yeah, just stay in Groningen, but I didn't have a kind of what you call the verblijf, the Holland verblijf, because I have the carte de séjour from France. Yeah. So actually, I like a kind of what you call a clandestine in Holland.
And parlez-vous français?
Parler français un petit peu parce que moi, je n'ai pas comment je n'ai pas des amis ici à Semarang pour parler français. Donc, ma français, je crois, il a disparu maintenant.
Moi aussi, de disparu, de oublié, tout de suite oublié.
Yeah.
It's very hard
English,
French.
please. I can't understand French at all.
Do you speak French too?
I used to, but now I forgot already. Sudah lupa.
For me, the what you call the most important Dutch word is sometimes drie halen twee betalen. That is the
Very
most
good.
important. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah.
Yeah. Drie halen twee betalen.
Looking for discounts is always useful.
That's right. That's right. Especially when we were students, right?
Yeah. The Netherlands is quite expensive. Huh?
Yeah. Especially for the housing, it's very expensive there.
Yeah. And I also think the health insurance these days.
Yeah. But the insurance service, the health service is quite good. It's very good. Yeah. How did you find the health service in Korea compared to in Holland?
Oh, it's also good.
Oh,
yeah.
Good.
But here it's more expensive because the health insurance is not so good. We only have partial health insurance, and so let's say 50% we get covered, and the other 50% we have to pay ourselves, or we need to have additional health insurance, private health insurance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, now I have additional health insurance just in case.
Is it similar with the health insurance system in France? Because in France we have also the basic health insurance, and we need also to have the what you call the, I don't remember the term for it, but we need to have the top up of the health insurance to cover all of the things.
Yeah, I think it's something similar. Could be. I'm not sure also about France.
But I don't know how many percent that should we pay in France when we have the health problem and need to be what you call hospitalized, something like that. But in Holland we have we don't have to pay anything when we have to be hospitalized, right?
Yeah, it's completely free. Yeah. But you're not. But you need to pay the insurance.
Maybe we can start now.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello, Pak Fadjar, Prof. Edo, Bu Arti. Nice to meet you. Can you hear my voice? I'm sorry.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Please continue.
Oh. Yeah, early Bu Wiwi. Yeah. Okay, morning everyone. Good afternoon, Professor Edo Andriesse.
We need to
welcome
introduce
to the international lecture series. Today we will explore more on the.
Sorry, Wardi.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we need to introduce Bu Wiwi to Professor Edo first, and other lecturer here.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Pak Fadjar. Yeah. We have the main topic on the possible future of rural transformation in the post-COVID era. Yeah. Okay. Before we start the presentations, maybe on behalf of our department, please welcome Professor Wiwandari Handayani, and as a head of our department.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Arti. Can you hear my voice quite clearly? I'm sorry, I'm outside of the office at the moment. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Or not? Okay.
Hello. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay then.
Yes, please.
Yeah, please allow me to turn off my camera just to ensure that I have a good connection here. Yeah, please. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It's really good opportunity for me to meet you, Prof. Edo from Seoul National University. I'm sorry that I cannot following this lecture all until last, but I just want to take 1-2 minutes in the beginning to give my high appreciation to you and also to Pak Fadjar and Bu Arti, because we in the department have what we call as international lecture series to give more international exposure to our students. So I hope that students and also other participants can take the opportunity to have more international related issues on urban and regional planning. And I hope there will be other opportunity for us to really meet in person and maybe also continuing more cooperation, strengthening the network between UNDIP and also your institution. So I think that's my brief introduction. And again, thank you, Pak Fadjar and Bu Arti. And I hope the lecture series will be.
Okay, thank you, Biwi. Your connection maybe is not stable. Also, my internet connection is unstable too. Yeah.
We lost your last word, Bu.
Ya, maaf Pak, ini sinyalnya mungkin kurang bagus ya Pak ya.
Sekarang terdengar, bisa diulangi lagi sedikit supaya Pak Edo bisa dapat semuanya. Yang terakhir tadi. So we lost her again.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear my voice now, Pak Fadjar and Bu Arti?
Yes, clearly.
Yes.
Okay, just briefly then I just want to say thank you very much for our invited speakers today, Prof. Edo, and I hope there will be more opportunity for me to meet you in person, and thank you to Pak Fadjar and Bu Arti also, and I hope our student can have more international exposure through these activities and involved in a very active discussion as well. I think that's all, Pak Fadjar and Bu Arti. And yeah, I give this over to you, Bu Arti. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Wiwandariandayani for opening speech. And now we have two speakers. Our invited speakers, Professor Dr. Edo Andriesse. He comes from Department of Geography, College of Social Science, Seoul National University, South Korea. And his interests in research are rural development in Southeast Asia, focusing on topics such as upstream seaweed value chains, coastal governance, rural inequality economies. And today with Professor Dr. Edo Andriesse, we also have our colleagues, Dr. Fadjar Mardiansjah, and he also want to present the theme of rural to urban village transformation and small growth in the urbanization process in Java. So maybe we can start with our invited speakers. Professor Edo, are you ready? Okay, you can share the screen. Time is yours. Maybe in 30 minutes maximum.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it? Oh wait.
Yes, we can
the
see.
screen is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to. Let me. Wait a second. I think for me, I cannot see some things very clear now on my computer. Wait a second. Where is this here? I have two screens on my computer, but now I think I want to switch it.
Maybe you can put on the chat and I will help you to share screen. Is it okay?
I want to try one more time if it's okay with you.
File? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
but
please.
I just want to, let's see if I do like this. Do you see it? Do you see the screen?
Yes, clearly.
It's clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, this is.
I think it jumps on the small holders, not on the title.
Yeah. So, okay. Okay, this is the title. Yeah, is it clear? Still clear?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, terima kasih
Still
banyak.
clear.
Still clear. Terima kasih banyak, everyone. And I would like to talk about the possible futures of rural transformation in the post-COVID area. And I would like to share some experiences of our research in Vietnam and the Philippines and Thailand. and actually, I'm also working together with Universitas Indonesia, the Department of Geography. And so, but we also looked into some of the issues related to rural transformation in Sukabumi, but that is still a work in progress. So it's maybe a little bit too early to present it these days. I might do it later in maybe next year, or then we have more data on it. Yeah, and in addition to what was already said in the introduction, I have been in Seoul at the Seoul National University for about 10 years, and before that I lived 4 years in Thailand, and my PhD was also on Thailand and then also on Malaysia. And my mother is originally from Bandung, so I have quite a lot of attachment to Indonesia and Southeast Asia in general. So I would like to start with some general slides for maybe perhaps students who are not really familiar with the global context, but I don't know, maybe you are all familiar already with it. But yeah, I think it's good to remind ourselves that smallholders are still very important in the world. But one of the problems is then that the land fragmentation, if you look at the statistics, many smallholders, many small farmers, they own less than 2 hectares. So that's actually not a lot. And there's also still increasing land fragmentation. If you look at the last bullet point, for example, in India, in 2016, 40% of the farms were less than half a hectare. So that's, of course, very small and very difficult to make ends meet. And another important thing is, I think that if we look at Asia and the Pacific, many analysts have said, oh, Asia and the Pacific countries have done really well in terms of economic growth and poverty reduction. Maybe that is true compared to Sub-Saharan Africa and even some countries in Latin America. But still, there are many millions of people who are actually undernourished and they don't have enough nutrition or healthy proteins and fibers. And there is still a high prevalence of stunting, especially in South Asia. And also at the same time, if we look more at processes of inequality, there is obesity for also many people who who consume too many calories, and the urban lifestyles, the modern urban lifestyles, can sometimes not be healthy. So also I need to be careful. That's why I am standing now at home. I have a standing desk, so I burn more calories than just only sitting and sitting. And yeah, traditionally we have seen a process of urbanization and people moving from the rural areas to the urban areas. But how viable is this actually? And if we look at all the people who moved, or let's say many people who moved from the rural areas, from the farms and the coastal areas to the city, we have seen that many people actually end up in the slums. So this is an example. Many people who moved from the rural areas in the Philippines, they did not become part of the urban middle class in Bonifacio Global City, but they end up in a very poor and dirty slums like Tondo, and that's a very sad situation actually. So focusing on let's say stimulating migration to the city is not always a solution. I think we need to find other ways. And so I would argue that rural revitalization is also quite important. Of course, we cannot stop people, and we should not stop people from moving to the city, but at the same time, we need to also focus on rural revitalization. So in this presentation, I will demonstrate why, and I will show some of the research results about rural transformation in Southeast Asia, and then come back to the topic of revitalization. So here we have positive processes that or people working for the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund and some other organizations. They like to see this, and they always also have a very positive view to say that, well, we have seen the structural and spatial economic transformation from agriculture to manufacturing to services. And ideally, if people move from the rural to the urban areas, then there should be a rising middle class, more people belonging to the middle class, instead of people working and living in the villages maybe many people can live in fancy condominiums with swimming pools and fitness centers, and there is a perception that it would be nice to go from helpless farmers and fishers to actively participating citizens in urban areas. And so these four are kind of four positive processes that we would like to see. And to some extent, it has happened in various Southeast Asian countries. However, we have also seen four negative processes that are still going on. And often, I think many people in Indonesia also know it, often migration doesn't mean permanent migration, but often migration means circular migration. People go to the city and then return to the rural areas in times of crisis or in times of a pandemic or the Krismon that happened in Indonesia many years ago. And also, there can be a relocation of poverty. Like if we look at this picture on the left side, this is a relocation of poverty from rural area to urban areas. And many people cannot make ends meet in Manila because they don't have good jobs. So then we have urban unemployment or under unemployment. And well, we are still witnessing a lot of increasing inequalities in the rural areas and also in urban areas. But if we look at rural areas, it's inequality of income, inequality of land ownership, land fragmentation that I mentioned before, and also difficulties to enjoy access to high quality education and healthcare. So, for example, when I was visiting the West Java and the tea farmers, and many of the young children, they and also older, but actually I should say many older people, they cannot really find a job in Jakarta or even Bandung because their Bahasa Indonesia was not so good. They usually speak in Sunda, and then it's sometimes hard to find a good job in Jakarta if the Bahasa Indonesia is not good enough. And related to the Philippines, we can also see more moral politics, the poor versus the rich in political battles. In the Philippines, there are some political parties that want to reduce the taxes for the rich, and they don't really care about the poor. And on the other hand, there are also parties who cater more to the people who are living in the farm or in the slum, and they are maybe more the populist policies. So the leaders reach out to the poor, but sometimes it's not really there is not a lot of fiscal responsibility. So there is this political polarization, the rich versus the poor, and it becomes also a moral battle then. From both sides, they are saying, oh, you are bad or you are bad. And it's not about finding the effective policies anymore, but just trying to be the winner all the time. And if we look at China, I think we have seen China has become much more an urban society. But India is in many ways still an agrarian society, despite its globalization, despite its economic growth. And you can see huge population growth in the rural area. And what I also find really remarkable is that if we look at economic crisis, or in this case, the COVID-19, then poverty has gone up and many people return to the home villages, back to the kampung, also in India. So we cannot say that, oh, the rural area is not important anymore. It's always a very important area. And especially in times of crisis, people from India moved back from the large city to the home villages because they lost their jobs. And another problem with India is that there is a very limited social mobility for the rural poor or for the migrants to the city. So it's actually much easier to fall back into poverty than to climb out of it. And that is a very big problem. So in our research project, we have looked at global development and inequality. So global, the combination of global and local. I really like that word. And we have compared fish farmers and fisherfolk. So one of the research sites is also in Sukabumi. And then we looked at environmental pressures, aligning bottom-up economic initiatives and top-down policies, and the rural-urban circular migration and the role of remittances. So the questions for today are actually, to what extent does the shift from agriculture and fisheries to manufacturing and services not only contribute to urban economic growth, but also to rural poverty reduction? And what do crises and shocks reveal for achieving decent living standards? So in this case, the COVID-19 pandemic. And how might Southeast Asian rural areas look like in the future? So let's start with Thailand. Actually, many people always say, oh, Thailand has been a very nice success story, a successful upper middle income country. But there's still a lot of inequality, and actually increasing inequality. So this scholar, Tansakul, he did a research about this level of inequality. So in the early 2010s, almost 50% of Thai families earned less than 15,000 Thai baht a month, which is around $500, whereas the average family income was 23,000 Thai baht, so about $770. So that is a very important statistics. Actually, we cannot just only look at the average income. It is much more important to look at the median income. And yeah, so actually, it looks nice, 23,000 Thai baht, but in reality, if you look, then most families' salaries and incomes are much lower than 23,000. That is because of the inequality. So of course, if you have some people who are billionaire, then they drive up the averages. And what is quite remarkable for Thailand is also the role of agriculture is still very important. So it's 20% of the labor force works in agriculture. And that is higher than Indonesia and higher than the Philippines, and also higher, also higher than Vietnam. So if you look at the average income, Thailand is not doing that bad, but agriculture is still very important. And many farmers and fishers in Thailand are actually not rich and face all kinds of challenges. So you can consult this news piece on Channel News Asia about rise and climate change in Thailand. I already sent the PowerPoint to the organizer, so I think students can maybe also have a look at it later. I'm not sure. So we did research about small-scale fisheries in Krabi and Trang, and that were our research sites in southern Thailand. It's not that far from Malaysia, maybe 200 kilometers from Malaysia. And Krabi, as some of you might know, it's quite famous as a tourist site. And there was also a James Bond movie in the past that was situated there. But there are still many livelihood challenges for the coastal communities. Not everyone can benefit from tourism. And for Trang, also a big problem is the ethnic, actually the religious minority. There are Muslim communities, but they are not really respected by the Thai Buddhist government. So they are discriminated against actually by the Thai society. And similar to Aceh in Sumatra, the Krabi and Trang were also affected by the 2004 tsunami, and the long-term legacy, there is still a long-term legacy of the tsunami, especially for the Trang marginalized communities. They still suffer from the post-2004 tsunami. material and psychological effects. So we asked them about COVID-19. So in this case, it is the small-scale fisheries. So you can see that now their income is much lower because the tourism collapsed. That many tourists usually go to Thailand, and many tourists buy seafood. So there was a lack of demand, much lower demand for seafood, and also the supply chains all changed in the world. There was a big supply chains disruptions. So the global seafood trade was also affected by COVID-19. So here we can see one of the results is that whereas those who used to earn about 120 to 210 Thai baht a day, many nowadays do not make more than 60 Thai baht. So that is, let's say, at least half of their income compared to before the pandemic. And out of 60 respondents, 40 stated that their monthly household income now is below 10,000 Thai baht. So that is even lower than the 15,000 baht that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, so here in the quote below, you can see very sad opinions of participants. The communities in Trang and Krabi, they feel neglected and they don't feel that they get enough support from government agencies. And they could say one of the statements is that we just keep floating in the sea until we are getting old. So they can just only catch a few fish, but not more than that. So yeah, these are quite sad stories from the coastal communities in southern Thailand, actually, and they were really much affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. For rubber farmers in southern Thailand, they were not really much affected. The global rubber trade was still doing quite well, or at least it did not really collapse. And so they could still sell their latex from the rubber tree, but they are not part of the middle class. It is not that rubber farmers are part of the middle class in Thailand. So some of the challenges they face is lack of land ownership, low rubber prices in general. They were still able to sell, but it's not that they get really rich. And then increasing occurrence of floods and also personal health issues. So this was in Patalung province, which is not far from Krabi. But yeah, the good news from this area was that they were not really much affected by COVID-19 pandemic. So for Thailand, actually, we have mixed results if we look at rural transformation. We have some good successes in tourist areas like Phuket or Koh Samui and central Thailand, but there are also severe environmental challenges. There are still slums in Bangkok, like the Klong Toi slums. I think it's also a good example of relocation of poverty from rural to urban. And also now that I'm living in South Korea, I also pay attention to migrants from Southeast Asia. So there are also many Indonesian migrants who work in South Korea. And if you look at Thai migrants, there are about 20 or 30,000 legal Thai migrants with proper documentation, but 150,000 irregular migrants who don't have proper documentation. And so they enter the country and then they overstay in South Korea. And most of them are from the rural areas, from northeastern Thailand, because they don't have a proper job in northeastern Thailand. So now we move to Vietnam. In my opinion, a very remarkable poverty reduction after 1986. And maybe also a kind of a role model of combining capitalism and welfare improvements in Asia. So if you look at agriculture and fisheries, they have become very strong, a top exporter of rice and tea and coffee and fruits and seafood. And so in the labor force, agriculture also is still quite sizable, with 90%, 29%. And what was also quite remarkable for Vietnam is that in the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, they managed to keep the pandemic out until mid 2021, and then after mid 2021 they were also more seriously affected. But in the first part, it was quite successful. So here we can see rural transformation, basically from rural area to almost urban area. So in the future, these rice fields might disappear and it might become an urban area, because this is maybe we can call this a peri-urban area near Hai Phong city in Vietnam. And they were not much affected compared to southern Thailand by the pandemic, but still there was some effects. So here, two quotes, that people were affected by the social distancing. No one goes to the market, no one buys food and vegetables, so they lost incomes there. And also people who don't live in agriculture, they were also very much affected, and they had a hard time to move from jobs. The tourism sector also collapsed, of course, during the COVID-19. In this case, the son of participant 48 became unemployed, and he could not find the proper jobs anymore. So this process of rural-urban transformation was also slowed down. It was slowed down by the COVID-19 pandemic. And another problem for the Vietnamese farmers and fishers was to get access to support. So the Vietnam offered relief packages for the people, but mostly for factory employees and office workers. And for farmers and fishers, it was really hard to get access to the support from the Vietnamese government. But on the other hand, several online direct selling initiatives were started to overcome the lockdown, so that farmers and fishers could sell their products online. But this was also a mixed success. Some farmers managed to do it, and others they still had a hard time. So to sum up Vietnam's spatial economic transformation, I think this is a good quote by Nguyen, Gillen, and Rick, who wrote about this in, I think it was the Journal of Rural Studies. So they actually sum up the Vietnamese experience as economic transition without agrarian transformations. So of course, economic transition, it means urbanization and industrialization, but there is no clear or no rapid agrarian transformation. So farming persists in peri-urban zones near Hanoi, because farming is still important. And other forms of work are not sufficient. So rice cultivation provides a spatial anchor with which to pivot through time and between sectors, and thereby to hedge against an uncertain future. Without rice farming, people get into trouble if there is an economic shock, or if there is a pandemic or another shock. So they still need to use farming. So that means the rural-urban migration is not enough in Vietnam. Many families still need an anchor in the rural area. And now for the Philippines, it's maybe the most problematic country among the three. Colonial legacy of the Spanish, so that it already started the land inequality already started by the Spanish. Large farms, we call the haciendas, exist, but they are of course owned by a few families, whereas the majority of peasants are still landless. Many peasants don't own any land in the Philippines, so that's a very big problem. It's a very unequal society. And also for fisheries and fishers, fishing communities, there are thousands of impoverished fisher folk. So that's also a big problem. So if you look at the statistics, labor force, it's about 24% of the labor force is in agriculture and fisheries. So it's a bit lower than Vietnam and Thailand, but in general, they are poorer. So if you look at the severity of poverty, is higher than in the other two countries. And another problem I think with the Philippines is that it's kind of a localist democracy, or I'm not sure actually if you can call it a democracy in reality, because the law of local rule prevails over the national rule of law, in my opinion, and some other analysts. The mayor has a lot of power, and various families and political dynasties have more power than, let's say, the Congress or the parliamentarians and the Senate members. So that's also problematic. So I would like to share with you some of my experiences with the seaweeds in the Philippines. There are also a lot of seaweeds in Bali and Sulawesi and other Indonesian islands, but I still need to visit those. But for the seaweeds, it's also interesting in the Philippines, a very important country for seaweeds. And so you can see here, the seaweed production was quite successful between 2008 and 2011. And then it went down because of diseases and because of environmental challenges, typhoons and pollution. But the Karaginan export still went up for a while. So actually this type of seaweeds is used for Karaginan, which is a binder or thickener in many industrial and pharmaceutical products. So actually a lot of seaweeds from Indonesia is exported to the Philippines, and then in the Philippines, the seaweeds are processed and refined into Karaginan, and Karaginan is then exported to many other countries from the Philippines. So when you use a makeup, or when you maybe eat ice cream, or you use toothpaste or another product, there could be some Karaginan inside to make the products thick, so that it's not that liquid anymore. Now, and in these are some photos of the coastal communities in islands in the Philippines where they cultivate seaweed. So you can see it's still relatively poor. This is not a real proper middle class. And here we can see a site where people can dry their seaweeds, and this was financed by the World Bank to have more proper seaweed drying facilities. But this only works if there is not much wind. If it's too windy in this coastal area, then all the seaweeds will of course fall into the water, or they will be blown away. And so it's not sure how sustainable this is. And here we can see an example of the seaweed growing communities in Iloilo. So I did quite a lot of research in Iloilo among seaweed farmers. And on the bottom right, you can see the path of Typhoon Yolanda and many other typhoons that have had similar paths, like Odette a few months ago. And here are my seaweeds growing areas, and in Iloilo province. So it is about 110 kilometers from Iloilo city. And most seaweed farmers, they live in houses along the coast here. But there are also some people who live in housing communities. and this is a new housing community built by the Philippine government, the National Housing Authority. And if we look for, so for seaweeds, the conclusion for seaweeds actually is that sometimes it helps the poor coastal communities, but not always. It's not something that is a guaranteed success, because there are so many challenges like typhoons, and there can be diseases, and there can be also pollution. So if we look at spatial economic transformation in the Philippines, there is actually not enough poverty reduction outside Metro Manila. There is a lack of government support. Rural population growth. So from this photo, for example, always children everywhere in the countryside, and population is still growing fast, but there are not enough jobs. And the result is then the exodus capitalism. Many people move out to other parts of the world to find a job. So what does all this imply for the future of Southeast Asia? So there are, according to Rick 2019 in his book about Thailand, there are two options. The first option is land consolidation, modernization, and rural exit, and also urbanization, or smallholder persistence and distributed livelihoods. So that is still the continuation of smallholder persistence and land fragmentation, or something in between, a mosaic of different forms of land use and transformation. So the third one is what I added by myself. So I think that Malaysia is going towards the first scenario, more modernization, large-scale modern palm oil and rubber plantations, and also they need to use a lot of labor. But I think that Indonesia and Vietnam and Thailand and the Philippines, they are still moving to the second or third scenario. So I think the word average and upper middle income country obscure and hide many livelihood struggles, because there are so many challenges still in a lot of middle income countries. So if we look at rural transformation, we can also look at maybe some of the rural paradises on earth, but of course it's very hard for every rural area to become something like Bali, and it's also really hard to become something like Chiang Mai with nice vegetables and fruit farms and coffee shops everywhere in the farm. And so this looks like nice rural transformation and the modern or maybe postmodern rural areas, but of course not every rural area can achieve this. So how will rural futures look like? Of course, I don't have a proper answer, but just some scenarios and thoughts. But what could happen? So in my opinion, continuing rural, urban, and circular migration seems unavoidable. I don't see a clear process of permanent migration. And following Krishna's, based on India's experiences, realizing more fully the potential of urbanization will, as paradoxical as it may seem, require making prior investments in India's villages. If we don't prepare villagers before migration to the city, they will end up being poor in the city. So we need to prepare villages before they migrate. And also, rural revitalization appears to be necessary given the lack of decent urban employment opportunities. So there are still so many slums in Jakarta, in Manila, in Bangkok, in Ho Chi Minh City, in Indian cities. So if we want to do something about it, it's not only about improving the urban areas, but also preparing people in the rural areas. So if you are more interested in some of the sources I used for this talk, you can have a look at Amazon or an Indonesian book website. This is a very good book on India by Anirudh Krishna, The Broken Letter. This one about Thailand, More Than Rural. And this third one, Moral Politics in the Philippines by a Japanese scholar, Wataru Kusaka. And here you can find some links to my own work, but I also send some of my publications to the organizers, so you can also consult them from them. So that was my talk, and thank you for your attention and for listening. And are we going to the second talk now or Q&A first?
Yes. Thank you, Professor Edu. Maybe we go to the second speakers first.
Yeah.
Thank you for the interesting presentations. And now, Pak Fadjar, are you ready?
Yes. Thank you, Bu Arti. I'd like to share my screen from me. Sorry. Yeah, my talk is about a rural to urban village transformation and the small towns growth in the urbanization process in Java. When we have the talk from Professor Edo talking about the rural transformation, then I'd like to talk about the transformation of some particular villages from rural characteristic to urban characteristic, that then creating and growing the towns, mostly in the kabupaten in Indonesia. And I'd like to talk about the phenomena in Java. Why in Java? Because actually Java is we have a distinctive characteristic in urbanization process in Java because of the high density of Java. Java is actually the most densely populated big island in the world. Java is the 13th big island in the world, and it has more than 1,100 something population per square kilometers in average. It's much higher than the density of Honshu, actually, of Japan, and also much higher than the density of Luzon of the Philippines. So this high density give the distinctive characteristic in the urbanization process that creates the growth of towns in many places in Java. When we talk about the urbanization process in Java, then we have.
Excuse me, Pak Fadjar.
Yes.
Can you put the full screen mode?
Oh yes. Oh,
yes,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Slideshow.
Yes.
Of course. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah. The urbanization process in Indonesia, we have today, Indonesia enter into the urban community since 2011 or 2012. Why? Because since there, Indonesian urban population has more than 50% than the total population, and we expect that the urban population still growing. We have here, it has grown from less than 3 million 100 years ago to be about 150 million urban population today, and most of them are located in Java. Java is the main area. Sorry. Java is, sorry, I choose the wrong yes. Why? Where is my screen? this one, sorry. I chose the wrong slide actually before. Yeah, Java is the main arena of the urbanization process. Why? Because we have more than 70% of the total population, of the urban population in Java up until now. Nearly 70% of urban population of Indonesia live in Java. Means that 2 from 3 urban population stay in Java. And with the
Can you turn on the slideshow, Pak Fadjar?
Oh yeah, sorry. Okay. Even though we have decentralization policy in Indonesia started in 2000, but still the duration of the decentralization policy could not change significant of the distribution of urban population in Java, but in Indonesia. But the other distinctive characteristic is most of the urban population live in small cities and also in the kabupaten area. Here we have 3 point of time, 2000, 2010, and 2020, with the number of cities and also the total population of this type of cities, and also the number of population, urban population reside outside the autonomous cities or in the kabupaten territory. We see here the number of the population in big cities and also metropolitan mega cities quite small in the proportion to the total, the urban population in Indonesia. And one of the interesting point is the urban population, the number of urban population live in urban areas outside the autonomous cities or in kabupaten territory is growing larger from time to time. And today we have nearly 100 million urban population live in the kabupaten area. And Java is the main arena also in the kabupaten. Here, for example, we have the number of urban population in Java is about how can I? Okay. It's about this is the number in 2010, about 50 million urban population, and it is about today nearly 100 urban population live in the kabupaten in Java. So then how we can see the growing urban agglomeration or the urban concentration in Java? We need to see how the enumeration of urban population in Java done by the Statistik Indonesia or Badan Pusat Statistik. The Statistik Indonesia do the classifying all of the village in Indonesia. It is the smallest administrative territory in kabupaten that we usually call as desa, and also the kelurahan in urban in the kota territory. And the Statistik Indonesia do the classification regularly, especially in the time of the national population census, to enumerate the number of urban population in Indonesia. They use the 3 criteria: the population density, the proportion or the percentage of agricultural family in the village area, and also the availability of the or access to some particular urban services. Yeah, of course they don't use the land use criteria in this classification, because it is not easy for them to do the to include the land use criteria, because we have more than 75,000 villages in Indonesia. That's why in some particular places there are many urban villages that still dominate. I mean, that the land still dominated by the non-urban, because the criteria used without the land use criteria in this classification. But what we have in the phenomena is the increasing number of urban village in Indonesia. For example, here we can see the increasing number from 2000 to 2010, and also from 2000 and 2020. We have here the increasing number, especially located in Java Island. The urban village increase very high in Java compared to other regions in Indonesia. And this is actually the phenomenon that then transform many kabupaten to be what are said as the urbanized kabupaten. What is actually the urbanized kabupaten? Urbanized kabupaten is actually the kabupaten that has more than 50% of the total population classified as urban population. Until, unfortunately, we don't have the result of the national census 2020 because of the pandemic crisis. Then they have not finished yet the enumerating of the urban population in 2020. But here we can see just a kind of illustration with the data in 2010. We have many kabupaten in Java that has been classified, that could be classified as the urbanized kabupaten. For example, here we have one kabupaten of 4 kabupaten in Banten province. We have also 6 of 17 kabupaten in West Java province to be classified as urbanized kabupaten. And we have also another kabupaten, that is Kabupaten Garut, that has more than 1 million urban population in its territory. In Central Java province, we have 6 of 29 kabupaten as urbanized kabupaten. And in Yogyakarta, we have 2 kabupaten of 4 kabupaten as the urbanized kabupaten. And in East Java province, we have 4 of 29 kabupaten as urbanized kabupaten. Most of the urbanized kabupaten are kabupaten that are located bordering to the city. I mean, the daerah kota, like city of Semarang, city of Bandung, city of, and also the much smaller city compared to Semarang and Bandung, like city of Tegal or city of Cirebon in West Java, for example, like that. And still we have some kabupaten not bordering to the city has become the urbanized kabupaten. And this is actually perhaps provide opportunity for us in Indonesia to transform the rural area by transforming the towns or the small city to become the center of transformation of the surrounding rural areas. That is the ideas. And this is actually the illustration on how the small towns in kabupaten bordering to the city. Here I use the Kabupaten Tegal and also Kabupaten Brebes to show how the towns or the urban concentration in the kabupaten area grown. Here I show the situation in 1990 and also in 2000. And the next slide, we can see the situation in 2010 and 2017. We can see here from these two slides how then the towns in the Kabupaten area growing, not only growing in number, but actually they are also growing in every towns that we have in the area. Just for example, here we have what you call the information about the towns in the area, the Kabupaten Tegal and Kabupaten Brebes in surrounding city of Tegal, what we can consider as small city in Indonesia. Why? Because the population of the city in 2020 is still less than 250,000 population in 2020. It is just about not many from the, maybe we can, if we use the 200,000 population as the what you call the somehow I forget the term in English. Do you?
Yes.
The batas. Batas itu apa? Bahasa Inggris.
Border.
No,
border.
Angka pembatas.
Batas ambang.
Ya, batas ambang.
Margin.
No, not margin, but somehow I forgot. Yeah, the borderline. Some people used 200,000 population as the margin line for the small city, and some other use 3,000.
Threshold, Pak Fadjar.
Sorry.
Threshold.
Yeah, the threshold. Yeah, threshold. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, the threshold is to 200,000, and some other use 300,000 as the threshold of the small city. Then we can consider Tegal, Kota Tegal, or the city of Tegal as a small city, especially in terms of the size of city in Indonesia. And still, we have many towns growing in surrounding the city of Tegal. Here we can see not only the growing population, like for example here, do you see the my cursor here? Yeah. For example, the town of Brebes, we don't only see the population number growing from 80,000 in 1990 to 135,000 population in 2020. But also we can see how the number, the growing area of the town from 11 urbanized village in 1990 to 16 urbanized village in 2020. We can see also the density of the towns from around 3,000 population per square kilometers in 1990 to 4,000 population per square kilometer in 2020. And what we have seen here, another interesting thing is we have many small towns that have population more than 100,000 population in the town. And actually, I define this town by using the administrative border of the kecamatan, the subdivision of the kabupaten. Why? It is because to simplify the identification of the town. But actually, in the real situation, some of the towns is not limited to the administrative area of the kecamatan. Just for example here, the towns of Talang, Dukuturi, and Adiwarna, these three kecamatan towns actually agglomerated into one town, one single town. And if they are counted as the agglomeration, we have the number of population higher than the city of Tegal that play the role as the center of the area. Not only the number of the population, but also the density of the area is similar to what we have in the city of Tegal. The other interesting point is we have also what we call as the growing number of town in the surrounding area of the city. Like here, for example, the Dukuhwaru town that not exist yet in some years ago, and then in 2010 it's beginning exist as a town, and then growing after that. And this also we have a kind of agglomerated merging process of the town. Like here, for example, the for example here, the town of Larangan and Jatikorek here, the upper one, the Mindaka and Karangjati in Kecamatan Tarub in Kabupaten Tegal, previously they exist as different towns, and some years later they agglomerated into one town. This is actually how the mutation of the towns in rural area of Java processing. And yeah, this situation also exists in the non-bordering kabupaten. Like here, for example, I use the illustration from Kabupaten Kudus in Central Java. We have also the expanding process of the urban villages in Kabupaten Kudus that can be classified as a kind of circling or what you call concentrated in one area and expand to the other to the surrounding area. And the other example here from the Kabupaten Jepara that has different phenomena than what we have in Kabupaten Kudus. Jepara and Kudus actually they are bordering. In the south of Kabupaten Jepara, it is the Kabupaten Kudus, but we have different kind or different type of the urbanization here. If we can say the urbanization process in Kabupaten Kudus become a kind of concentrated agglomeration, urban agglomeration in Jepara here, perhaps we can say a kind of a little corridor in the urbanization process. And we have also different type of the spatial process in Kabupaten Pati, the other kabupaten bordering to Kabupaten Kudus and Jepara. Here we have different type from the two previous kabupaten, but still we have the different phenomena, that is the growing number of urban villages from time to time. And here is the mutation of the towns in Kabupaten Kudus that has similar process with what we have in the bordering kabupaten, like in Kabupaten Tegal and Kabupaten Brebes before. We have.
Sorry, Pak Fadjar, we have time
Okay,
5 minutes left.
Yeah, and what actually we can learn from this processes? There is actually this is the urbanization process has bring Indonesia to the urban age actually, and the the spatial process in Java is very important to be seen. Why? Because the territory of Kabupaten in Java has become the main arena of urbanization process as well as the urban growth. That in short term, the spontaneous expansion process transform many villages into urban villages. The question is, do we need all of them to become urban villages? Because the urban, rural to urban transformation will become also a kind of predator of rural and agricultural resources, not only the fertile land, but also the human resources. And also, but also the process, I mean the spatial process, create the urban space that actually important for economic activities, not only for the big cities economic activities, but also for the rural agricultural activities, has become the instrument place to create the what you call the transformation or the improvement of the rural activities, transform the technological process and so on. And there are actually many types of towns in Kabupaten. Before we have the towns located bordering in cities, and also we have the town functioning as the capital of Kabupaten, and also we have the towns that not bordering to the cities and not the capital of Kabupaten. Why do I differentiate this town? Because they have different function. The towns located in bordering cities could be said as a kind of satellite town or a kind of dormitory town that where the people who work in the city live in the surrounding area, and the other towns that is not become the bordering town and also not the capital. This is actually growing from the not only the kecamatan capital, I mean the kecamatan center, but also growing from the rural center in the area. And how then these processes could be utilized to increase the benefit of the urbanization process while realizing the sustainable urbanization process. This is actually that become important question, and the ideas is how then we create the smart and integrated small town growth in the urbanization process. The smart growth is the growth that is directed do not consume the future resources, not consume the agricultural, I mean the fertile land, the agricultural land, and not also consume the agricultural human capital. In Indonesia, we have today difficulties in what they call in finding agricultural labor, because of they have to compete with the non-agricultural labor. And how then the improvement or the growing towns here could also improve the provision of the agricultural labor. This is actually what we have to think in the future. The integrated development means that the small cities towns should be directed to be the hubs in the urban network, not only in local network, but perhaps also in regional and also in the global network, using the towns to be the hub for the spatial integration and also the sector integration. And the small cities and towns should also be developed or directed to strengthen the regional interaction, the rural to town interaction, the inter-small cities and town interaction, and small cities and to towns larger than larger cities. Just perhaps the illustration here, like what I present here, the rural to towns interaction, where the towns not only become the processing area for the rural products, but also they have to be the place that could improve the productivity of the rural area in terms of the educational content and production system, in terms of also the technology transformation development and so on. And then how can also we create the inter-towns interaction in the urbanization process here in Java? Why? Because the distance from one town to other towns is actually just not far, less than 20 or some many towns, less than 10 kilometers from one town to each other. They are developed in the proximity area of the town. Then we can also create how then they can interact one to each other in the combination of the vertical or the horizontal integration in the area. I mean, in terms of the rural product, vertical, also horizontal integration, and also then how the small cities can also be strengthened, so then they become the hub, not for the rural activities to the greater urban activities. And this is actually the challenge. Perhaps the first challenge is the revitalization of the concept of small city or towns development by giving a place to development of small town to be a connecting instrument or intermediate towns, as well as the instrument in driving transformation for activities in the small cities, town, and the surrounding area, by developing prospective industry based on the processing commodities resulted from the potential asset in the surrounding area, developing education and training capacity for small city and town to improve entrepreneurship and also innovation process in the towns and also the rural area, improving the integration between economic infrastructure and facilities of the town and the economic production system in the towns and also the rural areas. And also perhaps we need to revitalize the role of small cities then in intra-regional and also the inter-regional cooperation for the purpose of developing synergy and also efficiency and economic activities, as well as for improving the welfare, not only the welfare of the people live in the town and also the rural areas, but also the welfare in the larger cities that actually depend on this rural and the town activities to provide their needs, at least to provide their food system. I mean, the food production system to feed the population in the towns. Maybe that's all what I like to say in this talk, Bu Arti and Pak Edo. And thank you very much, and also all of the audience.
Thank you, Pak Fadjar. Okay. Now we continue to our Q&A. That for the first speaker, Prof. Edo, he revealed about the difficulties after COVID-19. That COVID-19 slowed down the economic activity and give us some difficulties related to environmental change and also migration and relate to the urban unemployment, something like that. And Pak Fadjar focusing on spatial transformations, that it is important for creating hubs and also interaction between rural and urban. to strengthen the economic activity. Okay, from the audience, we have Mr. Rio. Yeah, the first questions is for Prof. Edo. Yeah, the question are, okay, the first question is about the, sorry. Yeah, spatial transformation is massively formed in developing countries such as Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam. The changes are tricks to farmland and rural specialty, the specialty land, yeah, swamp, mangrove, forest, and extra. And he also know about urbanization, rural urbanization, as the rural is urbanized, and none of commitment seen to restrict the changes, even the buildings constructed widely, for example, in Semarang. Yeah. And also he's asked about your opinion. What is the most important to be considered by developing countries planner to get a balanced situations of development and sustainable itself? Okay, please, Professor Edo.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rio, for your question. I think Dr. Fadjar already mentioned some of the answers in the end of the presentation to your question. I think there are some very interesting ideas about the revitalization of small towns. And in addition to that, based on what I have found in Thailand and Vietnam and the Philippines, is that zoning is very important when it comes to planning. I think sometimes in several countries there is not enough zoning from the start, so then we see the emergence of buildings and infrastructure without a clear zoning for what is actually agricultural land and what is residential land and what is commercial land. So I think there can be some better zoning practices or zoning policies in several countries, and of course they need to be enforced as well. And maybe the enforcement is even more important, the enforcement of the regulations. So then a big issue is then the corruption. Some land developers or developers of infrastructure, they want to build as fast as they can, and sometimes they might want to circumvent the regulations, and then sometimes they use briberies. That happens in Thailand and the Philippines regularly. So if there is no improper enforcement of the zoning, then there can be an abuse or misuse of planning by the powerful companies. So that one also needs to be tackled. And in terms of poverty reduction, I think the one of the key things is to look at employment, or actually Dr. Fadjar also mentioned it, with the various roles of people who live in the small towns. So I am not really in favor of universal basic income, but I am quite in favor of some guarantees for people to have at least a part-time job. I think that could be quite interesting also to link to the rural transformation or rural urban transformation, and also a way to make slums in cities more livable. If people have at least a part-time job, then I think the slum will also look better in the end if they have some more income and more activities. Maybe people who are living in slums can also help with more climate smart planning, smart infrastructure, trying to adapt to climate change with all kinds of infrastructure projects. So I think we can try to provide more at least part-time employment to people who are living in slums. So that's my take for now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Edo. And the second question is
can I add
okay,
my opinion to Mas Rio question, yeah, about the
yes, please, Pak Fadjar.
Yeah, I think that is actually our challenge in Indonesia to what you call to reduce the land conversion from agricultural land to non-agricultural land use. And one of the problem is what has been said by Pak Edo is actually because of the land parcel is very small. If Pak Edo before said that I'm not sure in Thailand or in Malaysia, less than 2 hectares per the what you call the land ownership, less than 2 hectares. But here in Java is much more smaller. If I'm not mistaken, the average land ownership, mean the agricultural land ownership, is just about 2,000 square meters per farmers. Then this is actually too small to agricultural activities. And then how can we transform the small landholders here to become a larger holder? Maybe what Pak Edo said before, what from the experience in Malaysia, that is the land consolidation could become the instrument to transform the small parcel or small holder of agricultural land into higher or larger agricultural land. Then perhaps the land consolidation should also follow by the social, I mean the not only the physical activities but also the social activities to transform the farmer from the traditional individual farmers become a kind of group farmers that organize the agricultural production system in terms of a kind of the estate farming. Before, in the traditional individual farmer, the farmer owned the land, but while when it has been consolidated, the land is not belong to the farmer anymore, but belong to the group of the farmer. So the farmer perhaps could have to be transformed also from the individual farmer to the group farmers, where the ownership not only the land but also but then become the share of the agricultural activities, perhaps the agricultural estate. Then with this transformation, then perhaps the effort to melindungi, to protect the land resource for agricultural activities could also be increased. Why? Because the farmers could not sell the land anymore. They only can sell the share of the farming estate, the agricultural estate, and the land still become the agricultural land. This is perhaps also that we can contribute from the spatial improvement or the physical improvement of the agricultural land to reduce the land conversion, to reduce the agricultural land conversion. And with the consolidation, land consolidation, we can also improve the infrastructure for the agricultural land. Hopefully, the improvement of the agriculture, I mean the infrastructure, then could also improve the productivity of the land. And if the productivity of the land has also could be increased to the level bring welfare for the farmers, for the owners, then the intention to sell the land become non-agricultural, that could be converted into a non-agricultural land, could also be reduced. That is also the ideas of how then we can improve the what you call the form of the land, the agricultural land, by the consolidation, land consolidation, what Pak Edo suggests before, based on the, if I'm not mistaken, the experience of Malaysia in improving the agricultural activities. That is perhaps my additional opinion to menjawab. To answer
Thank you,
Mas
Pak
Rio
Fadjar.
question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the second question is also from Mas Rio. Yeah, and yeah, in Pak Fadjar opinion, yeah, why the urbanization is sorry.
Why the urbanization is massively risen in Indonesia?
Yeah.
And how could we manage the infrastructure development in rural area to support in the rural activities and differentiate it to urbanization efforts? And then please share us your side, Pak Fadjar, about comparison of rural development in Indonesia and other countries, and what is the difference? Thank you so much. This is the question from Mr. Rio.
Rio.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the question, Mas Rio. In my opinion, the urbanization process is a kind of unavoidable process. We cannot refuse the process. I mean the urbanization process. Even the urbanization process come into the rural areas, or what we call as the urbanization process, the rural urbanization process. What should we do is to manage the urbanization process. So the urbanization process can take place in the expected place, and also could be directed as what you call as the power or the energy to improve the welfare of the people, not only in the urbanized rural areas, I mean the urbanized village, but also in the surrounding areas. That's why my idea is the smart growth, the growing towns that is directed not become a kind of spontaneous growth. The spontaneous growth is uncontrolled. It could be happen everywhere, like the mushroom in the rainy season. But if we can find an instrument to control the urbanization process, then perhaps we can what you call limit the process in some particular places. We need also the density of the population actually to provide services, and in these particular places, then we can also provide the services, not only the services for the people live in the particular places, the towns, but also the services for the surrounding rural areas. We need also the density for the economic activity. Why? Because the density provide the labor density that can also improve the potential of the area to do something. And the something should be also the processing activities of the rural production area. That's why we need also the urbanization process of the urbanization in the rural areas, but in in the way that is controlled, not happen in everywhere, but happen in every place that we expect to be the central, the service center for the area. Not only the service center for the social services, but also a service center for the economic services, like before the processing activities for the rural commodities. Why? Because the processing create not only added value but also provide the kesempatan kerja, provide jobs that is needed by also the agricultural labor, like Pak Edo before said, as a kind of part-time job, but also the non-farm job for the rural household that could create the welfare for the rural areas. And yeah, I think this urbanization is also needed even in the rural areas, but should be controlled in the way that we need to direct it, the urbanization process. We can see before in the case of Java, is bring opportunities. Why? Because the density of the population can create, just for example, towns that in the distant, quiet distant. Just for example, in the case of Tegal area, there is the town called a name Bumi Jawa town. The Bumi Jawa town is a town with 10,000 population, a quiet number for compared to I don't know, maybe Prof Edo can confirm, perhaps in Thailand, for example, in small or rural center in Thailand, but in even for Indonesia, 10,000 population is a small number, but for the improving activities in that area, it's it's quite promising, especially when we have the other towns like Margasari, that is a town with about 30-kilometer distance from Tegal area, that has about 30,000 population, and this number actually provide or promise potential to be improved as the processing center of the surrounding commodities of the rural areas. That's why we need to revitalize the town development. So the town development should not be a kind of spontaneous development anymore, but it is a kind of directed development in the town's development, like that. It depends on the how this surrounding area, the activities in the surrounding area. So then the town should be a kind of what I said before, the center of transformation for the not only for the towns but also the surrounding. That's why the economic activities of the town should also be directed to be the processing activities for the surrounding towns, and also perhaps the facilities, infrastructure, and other facilities should also be directed to be consistent with the activities, and also what we call the educational services, especially the vocational education or training in the area should also be directed to be in line with the activities in the rural area. Maybe that is my question. My answer. Bu Arti, thank you. Maybe
Thank you, Pak Fadjar.
Will add something?
Maybe Prof. Edo will add something.
Yeah, I actually want to add something on Malaysia. As Dr. Fadjar in the beginning said that, well, there are the densities in Indonesia are so high, yeah, and Java Island especially. So I think the one of the reasons why land consolidation has been possible in Malaysia is because of the much lower population densities. So there is much more land available, and there is less population pressure, and also the urbanization and has been quite successful in Malaysia, in the sense that many people who migrated to let's say Johor Bahru and Kuala Lumpur and Penang and other towns, they were able to find a job. So actually the migration, in my view, in Malaysia has been more permanent. There was a more permanent migration from rural to urban. So that also created more space for the farmers who did not migrate to consolidate their land and buy the land from the people who migrated. So that is a big difference, I think, between Malaysia on the one hand and Indonesia and Philippines and Thailand and Vietnam, because there we can see much more circular migration. People go to the city and then later they go back to the kampong or to the village if it's necessary. And then for Indonesia, definitely the population density is so much higher that then it's maybe more complicated to start land consolidation. So I think in a way Malaysia was a bit lucky with the lower population density to start this process of land consolidation.
Okay, thank you, Professor Edo. And there is 10 minutes left. I think I would call our undergraduate students. So now they have some studio in Karanganyar Regency that they must have some planning concept. And I wonder that maybe one of our students can ask, hello, anyone? Or maybe our postgraduate, our master students? Not yet. Okay,
maybe. Can I ask question, Bu? To
okay, Intan. Yeah, this is our doctoral program students. Okay, please, Intan.
Thank you for the opportunity. Prof. Edo, my name is Intan. I want, from your presentation, before you mentioned about rural-urban inequality, and in the last, as your recommendation, one of them is like, we should prepare people in rural area before they migrate to the urban area. And you said that there is no one-size-fits-all model or strategy to spurring development and reducing spatial inequality. And we know that without holistic approach and like the policies and programs to target areas for development, it not be success. And my question is, in your opinion, what kind of holistic approach of the policies or programs that incorporates multiple dimensions of inequality, so we can reduce inequality between the rural and urban? Thank you, Prof.
Yeah, it's a very difficult question. I'm afraid I don't have all the proper answers for that. But one thing is just the education, of course, is very important. Education in the rural areas, like I mentioned a little bit about the linguistic barriers, and that's also in the Philippines. If you want to have a good job in the city, but you don't speak one of the major Filipino languages or English, then it's really hard to find a good job. and then it's really hard also to become part of the middle class. So education in the rural areas as a way to prepare for rural urban transformation is very important. And in the case of Philippines and Thailand, in some parts, land reform is still, I think, also an issue. I think it's a bit different compared to maybe Indonesia. I'm not exactly sure, but there are so many people in the Philippines who don't own any land. And so before land consolidation, I think it's if there is more land consolidation in the Philippines, that means maybe more inequality, unless the people who don't own land get compensated somehow. But now we have a situation where there are very few families who own lots of land, and they are very wealthy, and they don't even live in the rural areas. They live in the city, but they can rent out the land to the farmers, to the peasants. And then we have many people who don't own any land, and they have a hard time, and they actually end up often in the slums, in the very poor slums in Manila, because they don't see their future in the rural spaces anymore, because they don't own any land. So I think for the Philippines, and maybe for Thailand even in some parts, land reform is also really important to reduce inequality. But then, of course, the challenge is the more land reform there is, the more land fragmentation there can be in the long run. And so that is a problem. So that is also need to think more about it, because we have also talked about land consolidation now as one of the options to improve the rural area. So there is a dilemma in terms of inequality versus land consolidation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your answer, Prof.
Maybe the last questions.
Bu Arti, I'm sorry. We have before we have question from the from YouTube, maybe. Or, yes.
Okay. Can you read the
yes.
question, because
okay.
I couldn't access the YouTube streaming.
The question is to Pak Fadjar. Based on the explanation of Dr. Fadjar, is there any direct impacts support implementation of food sovereignty regarding to predator pests in creating of urbanized villages?
Sorry, I couldn't catch the question.
Is there any direct impacts to support implementation of food sovereignty regarding to predator pests in creating of urbanized village? Direct impacts of food.
Yeah.
Predator pests, yes.
Of course, the direct impact of the what you call the food sovereignty is when the rural urbanization, not the rural urbanization, but the spontaneous rural urbanization occurs. Why? Because the spontaneous rural urbanization could become the predatory for the agricultural resources, not only the land that convert into non-agricultural land, but also in the case of Java, we have also the scarcity of the agricultural labor, especially in some activity in rural. I mean the farming activities, like what is the term in English, menanam tandur, when we not raising the seed, but move the not the seed, but what is the padi, the rice, baby rice.
Plantation. Cultivation.
Cultivate.
No, not cultivate. The menanam padi.
Plantation.
Plant the baby rice into the paddy field. the baby rice raised not in the paddy field actually, but in some places that raised from the seed into the baby rice. And the plant of the baby rice into the paddy field is not an easy job, and not many agricultural labor today want to do the job. They prefer to do the industrial job in factories nearby, for example, and also when the harvesting time of the paddy, it is also not easy to find the labor to do the harvesting. Why? Because the activity is very hard, and the salary or the upah, the wage is small compared to what they can have from just, for example, to be a kind of motorbike taxi driver with online support. This is the actual problem in some rural areas, the paddy rural areas in Java. So the urbanization, the rural urbanization process actually can consume these resources, not only the land, but also the human resource. That's why the agricultural activities should also be transformed into the modernized way of activities using the mechanization, for example. And this effort could also be mempertahankan, could guarding the food production system, especially if we also could improve or creating the processing process of the rural product. Why? Because most of the agricultural product are the commodities that can be rusak, busuk, broken, yeah, not broken, busuk. Do you know busuk in English, Pak Edo?
Tidak tahu.
Busuk means
decade,
yeah,
Pak.
Yeah.
Decay.
Yeah, decay.
Decaying.
Decay. Yeah. The agricultural product is easily to decay, and processing activities could extend the decaying period of the product. So it could improve the food sovereignty when we revitalize the or transform the agricultural activities into more not in traditional activities anymore, but in more modern activities. This perhaps my opinion.
Fadjar. Maybe last question for Professor Edo. With your experience on doing research in Southeast Asia, which the most ideal agricultural policy instrument? Which country that has the most ideal agricultural policy instrument? Thank you.
Well, I'm quite impressed by Vietnam actually, because they were very, very devastated country in 1975 at the end of the Vietnam War. And if you look now at Vietnam, they have done a very good job. And I think it's kind of a mixture of capitalism and social policies and welfare, and also the land regulations. There are, I think, compared to some other countries, there is less land, less elite capture. Let's say there is less elite capture, also because land is still actually people cannot really own the land, but they can lease or use the land. And then they can trade the land, but the owner is still the country or the government, let's say, or the
yeah.
people. But still, it's not. So it's kind of a combination of capitalism. People can sell what they want and grow what they want. But there are also some socialist policies to avoid elite capture and to avoid corruption. And there are a lot of extension support for coffee, for rice, for rubber, for tea. So now you can see in the rankings, Vietnam is very high in those rankings. Also fruit, like jackfruit, they are very high there. Yeah, I'm quite impressed by Vietnam. If you look 30 years, 40 years. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Edo and Pak Fadjar. And now it's time's up for us to further discussions. And it's quite interesting today's topic about what possible future of the rural transformation. Okay, and thank you for the audience, for our colleagues from lecturers on urban and regional planning who attend the meeting, and also our undergraduate students and master students, also doctoral students. And maybe for our habit to end this program with photos. So I would like to invite Pak Imam or Intan, and also all the participants to
open
turn
the video.
on the videos.
Turn on the camera. Only, okay.
Okay, please.
Okay, I will take a screenshot. 1, 2, 3.
Cheese.
1, 2, 3. Okay, enough.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Bu.
How many pages?
Okay. How many pages, Intan?
3 pages.
3 pages.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you once again, Professor Dr. Edo Andriesse, for your interesting presentations and give us some insight, and also for Dr. Fadjar for sharing the research of spatial transformation in Java. And yeah, for today, we can end up our discussions, and see you in the next series on International Lecture Series. And thank you very much, all of our audience. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you,
Thank
Prof.
you.
Edo.
Terima kasih.
Thank you. Thank you, Pak Edo.
Keep in touch. Keep in touch.
Yeah.
Love to keep in touch, Pak Edo.
Yeah, me too. Great.
And don't forget to tell us if you come to visit Indonesia. Even Bandung or Jakarta. Yeah.
Yeah, I will keep it in mind.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.